the Chicago Sun-Times newsroom, I'm Natasha Korecki, and this is Off Message, our weekly political talk show. Joining me this week, Mary Mitchell, Sun-Times columnist, Chief Operating Officer of Reboot Illinois, Madeleine Doubek, and from Springfield, our Springfield Bureau Chief, Dave McKinney. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about the U.S. Senate race. We've got Dick Durbin versus Jim Oberweis, a recent poll we had showing that this race is narrowing. Is Dick Durbin in trouble, Madeleine?
I think it's probably a little early to say he's in trouble, but I don't think that he'll take anything for granted, and I'm sure he'll be out there pushing the minimum wage and other issues that work with his core constituency.
So many people are writing off Jim Oberweis as not even a contender. Why do you think that we're seeing these numbers that are sort of reflecting?
I think that with Jim Oberweis, you got to understand that, well, I understand that he got a track record and he's been a loser. There's enough time for him to come out and say something truly outrageous and controversial that would get him into trouble. So even though the numbers are showing that he could be catching up, I just don't think that those numbers are going to hold up when it comes to election.
So we haven't seen much of him. Do you see him out campaigning?
I have not seen him out campaigning, except that I was very, very surprised that he would even accept an endorsement from Bishop Larry Trotter.
Right.
I was floored by that. Number one, you have Bishop Trotter, who's presenting himself to be this pastor of this 8,000-member church. If you drive by there, you'd be lucky if you see 50 cars. So that's the first of all, he's not really a huge influence in the African-American community. The second thing is that he has been so controversial. He's had a messy divorce. He got in trouble with Instagram by posting a photo of himself in the tub, having a bubble bath with his granddaughter. That really outraged people. This is not the kind of person that would be influential in the African-American community. So even though he's out there, he's trying to make inroads, I think he's chosen the wrong vessel for that.
Do you buy this, that the African-American vote is starting to
Well, I mean, I think
that
we've certainly seen that the Republican candidate for governor, Bruce Rauner, is working hard at trying to make some inroads in the same community. Mm-hmm. Jim Oberweis is obviously following the same model and trying to do the same thing. He was at the state fair. He mentioned another African-American pastor at that time, Corey Brooks.
I have been out with him at the corner of 79th and Cottage Grove for the last 3 or 4 Fridays, and I'm going to be out there again tomorrow night. He's
clearly trying to reach out to communities and constituencies that wouldn't be thought of as natural for him.
So Dave, Oberweis, 5-time loser, finally is elected to the state Senate. What kind of record is he building up for himself there?
There's not been much that he has done here. I mean, first of all, he's in the super minority in the state Senate. You know, the Republicans have 19 seats in the Senate. And so he's not really been able to do a lot. The only thing that he's really ever been able to do in the nearly 2 years he's been down here is basically increase the speed limit in the rural areas of Illinois. He moved it up to 70 miles per hour. Beyond that, there's not much you can point to, and I think that's kind of an issue. But on the flip side, you look at a longtime senator like Dick Durbin. I mean, he's been around forever. I mean, I think you would be hard pressed to go out onto the street and ask, name 2 or 3 big issues that are associated with Dick Durbin. I mean, I find him to be a very accessible and earnest and diligent legislator. But again, you don't see him, aside from his seniority, out in front and passing a lot of legislation. I think a big, of course, lately part of that's been because of the gridlock in Washington. But, really, both of these guys, I mean, I don't think average voters tend to associate a lot with them.
On the other hand, they know both of their names.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this could be pure name recognition.
And it really depends on the messaging. If people really buy into the message that you shouldn't make a career out of being a politician, that you should not be in Washington forever, that you need to go someplace else, then they'll probably kind of gravitate toward Oberweis. But I just, at least for the African-American community, I don't see them switching partners at this dance. I just don't see that happening.
I think it's clearly an effect of the national Republican wave that a lot of people are talking about. This is the type of an election. It's an off-year election at the federal level, and that's usually when the opposition party tends to do the best. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing it in Illinois, both in the governor's race and in the U.S. Senate race, where the Republicans are doing well. It's like that across the country.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit to, we've got Governor Quinn living off the minimum wage, $79 for the week, and he's trying to do a little bit each day. Contrast that with Bruce Rauner this week. He was asked about a wine club, if he was a member of it, and it cost $140,000 to join, and he said, yes, I do. Was there any problem with him admitting to that?
Well, you know, if he wants to present himself as a working class guy with the plaid shirt on, then of course that image is not going to hold up when you belong to a $140,000 wine club. Quite frankly, I think the people who are going to vote for who would vote for Rauner doesn't care about that sort of thing. They're not the kind of people out here going rah rah rah. Let's raise the minimum wage.
Does this whole wealth issue, is that going to influence somebody one way or another?
You know, I think that remains to be seen. To me, the significant thing this week was Dave's story, an old radio interview resurfacing in which he said that he wanted to eliminate the minimum wage. That, I think, could have some legs with people and upset them a little bit more than, you know, some of this class warfare sort of imagery that's been going on.
Do you see the minimum wage thing as some kind of political stunt, or is there some substance to it?
Well, I mean, there is some substance to it. I mean, clearly, you know, you're talking about a class of workers. I mean, 1.1 million Illinoisans right now earn the minimum wage, so it's not an insignificant number of people we're talking about in the state. We saw Paul Vallis come out and compare this minimum wage issue and what Rauner said on the radio in January to Mitt Romney's 47% moment in the 2012 campaign. And that, you know, I don't know if it's going to rise to that level or not, but clearly it shows, I think, a little bit of insensitivity toward the working poor. And that's an issue that the Rauner people have been very sensitive about. You know, average Illinoisans, can they relate to him? I mean, $140,000, that would buy a house for some people. And I think, you know, you're talking about a few bottles of wine there.
Okay, but, you know, I want to take it back to the Democrats. I mean, they have super majorities in both houses. They wanted the minimum wage raised. Why haven't they done it already?
It's not done because they wanted to use it as a political issue, and they are absolutely using it as a political issue to the hilt, as we're seeing with the governor living on $79 this week and out mowing his lawn in front of his house in his latest ad.
Cut over 2 million square feet of office space.
But what's interesting to me is that both of these candidates, they want to present their position by saying, you know, I'm for the working class or I'm your guy. But the fact of the matter is, what have they done in order to help the working class? I mean, I think that that's what people are weighing. That minimum wage issue is not going to go away. People are hitting the streets and people are protesting and people are willing to get arrested on this issue. So I think that's what's going to really tell the tale. If Rauner or if Quinn is able to convince the voter that they care about those issues.
Well, can I kick that back to you, Dave? I mean, how hard did the Democrats try to pass a minimum wage? There was a bill at some point.
I do think behind the scenes here that there probably was a realization that this, you know, was an issue that would drive turnout, and that's why we saw the referendum. If Quinn, Durbin, and the Democrats are successful in getting even half that number to the polls, that is a significant number of votes. And so I think that's why you're seeing it here. Clearly they could have, you know, with supermajorities, they could have passed it in a heartbeat had they wanted to. But I think they saw that there was, you know, a better use for this issue in the fall elections.
Great discussion. Let's turn to quotes of the week. Mary, you look good and ready.
I love this quote. Bishop Larry Trotter, and when he explains why he's endorsing Jim Oberweis, he says, "When you pastor an 8,000-member South Shore church, I think you ought to get a return phone call." And he's complaining about Durbin never calling him back. And all I got to say is, if there's 8,000 people in that church, I don't know where they're parking.
All right, Madeleine.
Bruce Rauner, one of the things that he's promoting and advertising very heavily right now is he's going to put his foot down and stop property tax increases and take control of this issue. There's no details coming forth whatsoever from the Rauner campaign about how exactly this would be done. And longtime Sun-Times reporter Charlie Wheeler runs a reporting program in Springfield, weighed in on this. And about the Rauner campaign, he said, quote, "I can't believe they're as uninformed as these things make them sound. It has to be they're counting on the rest of us being uninformed and taking this nonsense at face value."
Telling it like it is, Charlie Wheeler. And Dave, what do you got?
You know, Charlie is a very tough act to follow. So this just, again, pivots back to the minimum wage. Bruce Rauner on the radio program in January of this year, I've said on a number of occasions that we could have a lower minimum wage or no minimum wage as part of increasing Illinois' competitiveness. I've said that many times. Going on record like that is significant.
And as Madeleine said, we'll probably hear that in an ad, radio ad sometime. And then mine comes from David Lewis. He is the publisher, photographer, writer with Montana Pioneer, which published a photo of Rahm Emanuel in Montana holding a very expensive bottle of wine, which is how we know about all this wine club with Rauner. The photo also had Bruce Rauner in it. I asked him if he had published that picture before, and he said, yes, but I cropped out Rauner. I didn't know who he was. And by the way, he thought that Rahm Emanuel was Robert Downey Jr.
I agree, it's not my best disguise, but let's make do.
With that, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next week on Off Message.